Hey, welcome back to the About the Later podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today we're reviewing the Minnesota Vikings victory over the Atlanta Falcons, a 14-9 finish for the Minnesota Vikings, moving to 10-2 on the season. So we'll do a little upon review action on that. I attended a Stefon Diggs charity event today, so we'll talk a little bit about him and kind of what makes him an ideal player, a very marketable player for doing stuff like charity events. Then we'll talk a little bit about Drew's Skull Scale segment. Drew does this basically every week. What volume are you on now?
16, 17, something like that. So it started in the preseason, and it's kind of run through each week of the regular season now.
Right. So Drew has been doing this for a very long time. So we'll talk a little bit about that and how you guys can get involved in that. He does those articles every single week. And then after that, we'll do a little story time action. It seemed like you guys like it when I tell stories, so I'm going to tell you guys another story today, since Wednesdays tend to be rather quiet days overall, or early in the week tend to be rather quiet overall relative to Vikings content. After that, we'll finish up with some Twitter questions, and we got another extended sign-out for you talking about a T-shirt giveaway, some stuff that's coming up for me and Drew, and then the regular stuff per standard. So let's jump right into this now with a word from our sponsors. This is from Black Stack Brewing once again. With the Vikings victory on the horizon, it's important to talk about victory, success, winning, and beer. That's right, it's time for another beer pong tournament over at Black Stack Brewing. The Jingle Cup is finally here. Come pong next Saturday, December 9th, for a chance to win free beer for a year and $100 in free delivery from Running Tap. That's Running Tap, folks. The tourney starts at noon, but if you want to limber up, come in for yoga at 11 on Ohm Brewers, folks. They bring you yoga to breweries, do an absolutely fantastic job. El Burrito Mercado, one more time, El Burrito Mercado will be there with delicious tacos, and there's always great beer over at Black Stack Brewing, but you knew that already thanks to these little cans behind me sitting here. You really can't go wrong here. See you at the Jingle Cup next Saturday. Tickets available at beerpong.twincities.directory. That's www.beerpong.twincities.directory. All right, Drew, let's hop into some Vikings football now, starting with our upon review section. So since the last time we talked, I've gone over the tape. We've discussed. You and I have had some discussions on, players we thought stood out, the players maybe that we thought stood out and didn't do as well as we suppose, that type of stuff. So that's kind of the game plan for this short segment here. Looking at Case Keenum once again, any changes from your initial kind of thoughts on his game performance against Atlanta on Sunday?
Not really, because my initial takeaway was that Atlanta really took away those top two guys, Thielen and Diggs, and made the Vikings win with other guys, and I was kind of right about that, but I kind of didn't critique Case Keenum enough, I don't think, in the way. So it to me, when I watched it again, it looked like he was really sticking on one receiver, at least in the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter. It appeared as if he was really sticking to one guy. A couple times he missed Thielen over the middle while looking at Diggs, and vice versa. So that was one concern, I guess, that I saw as I watched it the second time. I don't believe this is something that's to be concerned about moving forward, because he, corrected obviously during the rest of the game, played lights out in the second half, and led that 15 play drive. Again, this is just something I observed. It's not really a concern, and I'm not trying to critique Case Keenum to the point where, oh my goodness sakes, this guy's not the QB of the future, or whatever thing you want to throw at me for this. I'm just simply saying something I saw from the quarterback position, and really this is something that happens to every quarterback at some point during the season. If you get hot with one receiver, you kind of look that way, and you kind of really anticipate that guy getting open, for example, and if it doesn't happen, and you're too late then on your next read. So that was one thing I noticed with Case. I don't know if you saw the same thing, but that's kind of one thing I observed when I watched it again.
Absolutely. So Case Keenum for me, the one thing that I said this, I believe, on the Rapid Reaction show, but the pocket awareness, that was kind of the one critique I had, but that was strictly early in the game for me. Like I said before, I think that he came out strong in the second half, whether that was a product of a good second half script by
right.
The offense and whatnot.
I think a lot of it was, actually. I mean, it seemed because I don't think, if I remember that second half, after watching it again, I don't think Case Keenum even had to go to a second or third on the progression for the most part. A lot of it was just kind of, it seemed as if it was as scripted. You would look for a guy off and he's open on the other side of the field. It just seemed like that's what the method was for Keenum in the second half, and I think a lot of that was due to Pat Shurmur making halftime adjustments and making things easy for Keenum. I mean, again, that 15-play drive, 89 yards, I think it consumed just under 9 minutes of time. You don't do that without a tremendous scheme behind it and tremendous play calling. So hats out to Pat Shurmur there. Not again, I'm going to keep saying this because I feels like every show we get critiqued for us criticizing Case Keenum too much, but Case Keenum executed a brilliant game plan very well. It's not to take away from what Case Keenum's capabilities are. It's just identifying what Pat Shurmur did really well. And again, my takeaway was Case early on in the game was stuck on his first read a little too long. And again, you have examples here of just a couple of times where his pocket awareness was not up to par. But we know throughout the game that improved.
Relative to Case Keenum, of course, right?
Right.
So the rest of the offense, any guys that stand out for you? I think the one play for me that stood out watching it again on offense, and credit to Miles Gorham for throwing this one up on Twitter. I saw it from him on the GIF form, and that's why I went back and actually specifically looked at this play about 20 or 30 more times. That was Adam Thielen getting off the line of scrimmage.
Oh, yeah.
And the quote that Miles used there was, "If you reach, I teach," which is so perfect because that's exactly what happened on that play. The Atlanta Falcons cornerback, I believe it was Alfred, I'm not 100% right now, basically he tried to press out at the line of scrimmage. Adam Thielen dodged it very, some excellent athleticism, and then basically he broke off the line of scrimmage and created, 5 to 6 yards of separation just initially. That was what created that slant route and allowed it to go so well for the Vikings. That might have been a turning point play as well. So that was kind of the upon review play where I looked at it and was like, wow, this was one hell of a play that I don't know if people actually saw just how great it was during the real-time broadcast, I suppose. So any other big plays for you that stood out?
I have one just player observation. I thought Pat Elflein looked a lot better the second time I watched. I think he was one of the catalysts for that big Latavius Murray run that thrust the Vikings inside the 5-yard line of Atlanta. And then in pass protection too, I thought he was tremendous as well. Held his own there, and then a couple times on screens. I believe the first Diggs one right at the beginning of the game, and then there was another Jerick McKinnon one as well where he was down the field making plays. That's nothing new for us with Pat Elflein, but it was just something that I didn't see initially watching the game, live. And then, when you watch again, it seemed like his, the number 65 jersey was making plays all over the field. So I think the Vikings got a good one with him. That's tremendous third-round value from Rick Spielman that, I think a lot of teams wish that they would have taken a chance on him. Maybe Seattle, I believe, because they took Ethan Posick. That was another guy that we had looked at. It was Ethan Posick. He's now playing tackle, by the way, for Seattle.
Right.
So I'm glad that the Vikings passed on him and waited for Elflein because I think that's working out pretty well.
Absolutely, completely agree with you there. So from there, let's jump into the Stefon Diggs charity event. Like I said, I attended the hospital down at the U of M today. Stefon Diggs was there surprising a couple of families. He does this fantastic work down at the hospital. Other guys that are involved. Kyle Rudolph's a big one. He's actually the fan favorite amongst the kids there. Michael Floyd is down there a bunch as well, I know. So those are 3 guys that I know for a fact are down at the hospital all the time. But Diggs specifically, this is a guy, and with Diggs, when he was coming out of Maryland, a lot of people were looking at him like too small, system-wide receiver, Percy Harvin clone, but not quite good enough. All of those different things. He ends up being a 5th-round pick to the Vikings. And when the Vikings selected him, I went back and reviewed his tape. So I'll be honest with you, I had a buddy that was like, look, you got to check out Stefon Diggs. This guy's the real deal. And I was like, okay, yeah, absolutely. And this former buddy of mine is a former wide receiver himself, so I figured that his opinion on the man was probably a good one. So I took a hard look at Stefon Diggs, and I wrote an article for a website that I was writing for at the time. It was my personal website called Sports Burrito. And basically what I wrote was that Stefon Diggs has unbelievable talent, and this was kind of after noticing what he was able to do from a route running perspective at training camp. It's a reason why I'm so big on route running now, because I watched him run routes at training camp, and I was just like, wow, he's breaking up the line of scrimmage so quick. He's creating so much separation. His quote small body doesn't matter. He's just was doing his thing out there, and so I wrote this article and I compared him to Deshaun Jackson. Now, a couple years later, that comp actually is starting to look not true, because he's a much more well-rounded player than Deshaun Jackson is, to be honest with you. He's more of a possession wide receiver, but he's also an explosive wide receiver. So, honestly, the Antonio Brown comps that started coming out, like when he started hitting it big against Aqib Talib and that kind of stuff in 2014, all of those comps and stuff were, in my opinion, are proving to be fairly accurate. Diggs is starting to look a lot more like Antonio Brown every single year. Again, he's not Antonio Brown. I'm not saying he's Antonio Brown, but he certainly looks like him at times. With the helmet on, if you looked at both guys and we flipped their jerseys, I think that Diggs and Brown would actually look quite similar. So getting back to this charity event, and what's important about why I just prefaced it here with basically stating that that he's a very good wide receiver, is that he's also an extremely marketable personality. And this is something that I've been pushing specifically on Twitter over the last couple months. One of the reasons why I pushed it, because that insane person, posted that video about how he was, during his touchdown dance, he flew
that was the most insane tweet I think I've ever seen, right?
I know. And
so what was it that the person was saying, that it was a terrible terrible celebration because he was reenacting
9/11,
right? Or something like that.
Oh,
God, that's the biggest reach I've probably ever seen on any social media post,
and
probably the biggest reach of any person's normal, or what is supposed to be a normal thought process.
That's what you'd think, right? Right. But and honestly, I don't want to keep giving that person any more looks.
Well, we're not saying giving up the or the the name of the Twitter account, right. So I think we're good here.
Right. But that was horrible, so I have felt compelled to kind of defend his character, and that's part of the reason why I was so excited to do this charity event today, was because I had done mob interviews with Stefon Diggs before, but I'd never gotten some one-on-one personal time with him. And for what it's worth, I only got about 10, 15 minutes of actual one-on-one contact with Diggs today. But I can tell you straight up that all 15 minutes were fantastic. He's a great guy, fantastic smile. He makes you feel welcome. He stared me straight in the eye when I was asking him questions. Basically, he's a very professional person that, in my opinion, still has some swag to him, some diva, some personality. And this is why I think he's so marketable and why he has that CenturyLink commercial right now. Simply because he is a great personality, he's a great human being, and really the only question we've ever had with him is durability. I mean, what other question has he posed to us other than durability? I mean, maybe character, but if you're saying character, you're reaching, because he's just passionate. And
that's a very large reach.
Yes. Sometimes I've just seen people be like, yo, Diggs, don't get these 15-yard penalties. But, buddy, you got to understand, sometimes that's just inherent to playing, 150% on every single play. Sometimes you just get so jacked up that you do something stupid. And you know what? That's why the penalty is there. But at the same time, it doesn't define the player, because how many personal foul penalties does Diggs have this year? I believe he has 0, because he had 2 last year, which in my opinion, that means he's stepping forward. So he's improving his character, he's improving his person, he's improving his route running, he's improving his catching. He's improving every single year. So Stefon Diggs, extremely, extremely impressive person in my opinion. Definitely a guy to go to bat for. Definitely buy that number 14 jersey. Highly recommend that. He simply does a fantastic job all the way around, from a personal perspective to an on-field perspective. Couple of things that I want to throw out here as kind of informational pieces. People seem to like, getting to know players a little bit more. Number one question I always ask is, do you like Nintendo 64 or PlayStation more? I asked Caleb Jones that this summer. I believe I asked Captain Munnerlin last summer. That's just one of my favorite questions to ask, because I love video games, as you can see from the video games sitting behind me here. So, basically, he told me, and the reason why I posed it, what made it pop up was because the Xbox was taking so long to download Madden so that he could play with the kids in the hospital, because that's what he was doing. He was sitting there hanging out with, kids that were suffering and playing Madden. And basically he he kind of just he we were talking after we walked out the room, and I was like, "Hey, Diggs, what'd you think of taking forever for that download?" And he was like, "It's not like the old school video games, And I was like, "PlayStation or N64?" And he's a PlayStation guy, which I'm a Nintendo guy to heart. A couple of my buddies might disagree with me on that, but generally speaking, I'm a huge Nintendo guy. So questionable answer by Diggs. Maybe the one knock I have on his character right now. And so for what it's worth, he's a Crash Bandicoot guy, a Spyro guy, and there's a couple other games that he mentioned as well. He also told me that he played Sega Dreamcast. I asked him if he played Sonic. He said that was one of them. Extremely, extremely easy guy for me to talk to. Once again, looked me in the eye all the way through, treated me with respect despite, my status as a blogger. I was very impressed with him. I'm very proud to have number 14 on our team. Any kind of thoughts, any reaction to, Stefon Diggs? Does this kind of this seal the deal here for you? Like, it's something we kind of already knew, but having the opportunity for me to, me and Sean Borman to go in there and basically get to know him and see for ourselves sort of proves it, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I mean, the one thing I've noticed, or at least I noticed today when I was looking through you and Sean Borman's Twitter timelines, as you guys were both there, I think one of you tweeted something about, or tweeted a quote from Diggs that he said something like, I didn't have a TV or I didn't have the technology, so I played outside when I was younger, which kind of, and we've known his story that, he didn't have everything growing up, and, and he kind of is one of those long shots that, not expected to be a guy that'll make it. He went to Maryland on, he wasn't expected to be a draft pick necessarily. And then a fifth rounder out of Maryland with all these injury issues. Nobody really expected him to do much in the NFL. And he actually didn't even play. He didn't suit up for the first 3 games of his career. It just kind of, I think that embodies who Diggs is and like why he's humble and why he does these type of things, these events. But I think it also embodies the team as a whole, because look who's playing QB right now. You got an undrafted guy really getting his first shot with a team that's not Jeff Fisher coached, right? Or in Houston he was playing there too. But Adam Thielen, we don't need to rehash that story, do we? Right. You got CJ Ham, you got all these guys on defense that Everson Griffin was basically counted out of the league after I think he had two arrests in like 4 days back when he was a rookie, and now look at him. Right. Yeah. So, I could go on and on about these stories, but basically, a lot of these guys on this team are either low draft picks. They've had that, a rough story growing up. They're all long shots essentially. And I think they're taking that mentality to this team and this run that they're on right now. And that you can see that there's not that selfish attitude from anybody. It's just, they all want to win and they all know what the mission is here, and that, they have that humbleness that humility as part of this, and I think you can see it from everybody. And I think it's a very big part of what this team's mission and how their team motto, I guess, would be. If I had to pick a team motto right now for this team, I'd say stay humble, because they know where they came from and they're using that background, they've learned from it, and they're now applying it here, kind of as a way to prove people wrong.
Yeah, so many mid-round guys in this team. Just thinking about it off the top of my head, think about the first-round picks versus the mid-round picks spread here. Brian Robinson, 4th. Linval Joseph was a earlier round pick, but basically the Giants decided not to re-sign him, so he got a chip on his shoulder coming to Minnesota. Tom Johnson, veteran, didn't do anything in New Orleans, comes in here, starts dominating. Everson Griffin, 4th-round pick out of USC, as Drew said, a couple of arrests. Linebackers, you got a first-rounder in Anthony Barr, a second-rounder in Eric Kendricks, who should have been a first-round pick in my opinion. You got Ben Gideon, who's got a chip on his shoulder as a 5th-round pick, I believe. 4th-round pick for Ben Gideon. Came in here. I said he was going to be awful. Personally, I
didn't like it either, and I think he's proved me wrong.
Right. We wanted Jalen Reeves-Maybin, who went to the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, we did.
But I'm very happy with Gideon now. So then you get to the secondary, and that's really where the only first-round picks are, right? Trey Waynes, Xavier Rhodes, Harrison Smith. And then you got Andrew Sadejo, who is an undrafted guy out of Rice.
And Anthony Harris.
And then you got Anthony Harris out of Virginia, an undrafted guy. J-Ron Kearse, a 7th-round guy out of Clemson. I mean, look at all these guys. This is just the defense. We didn't even go through offense. Case Keenum, Adam Thielen, Stefon Diggs. I mean, Kyle Rudolph was a 2nd-round pick. Nick Easton's undrafted. I mean, Alex Boone, when he was still here, he got tased because he was too boozed up when he was at Ohio State and then ended up dropping. I mean, look at all of these guys that Mike Zimmer is bringing in. They all have one common trait. They're underdogs, and they have that mentality. They have that chip on their shoulder. They reflect their coach, and that's how the Minnesota Vikings are playing this year.
Hey, Mike Zimmer himself.
Mike Zimmer's quotes.
He had how many eye surgeries the last 12 months? Like what?
How many teams
47?
passed over Mike Zimmer over the last decade? Is it? I think I remember hearing 10. I think you made the comment about the Bengals and where they would be if they had kept Zimmer on and fired Marvin Lewis like they should have. Oh my God! Are they out of their minds? Like, your biggest issue right now.
How long has Marvin Lewis been coaching?
94 years. I mean, like, you look at their biggest issue right now. It's not talent. They got, A.J. Green. Honestly, Vontaze Burfict, horrible person, but a lot of talent on that guy. Carlos Dunlap, unbelievable. Geno Atkins, unbelievable. Andy Dalton, plenty of talent, just kind of erratic. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Tyler Boyd out of Pittsburgh, their receiver that hasn't broken out in a big way.
Just drafted Joe Mixon, too.
Joe Mixon, one of the most talented players that we've seen come out at the running back position as of late, but basically he's a comeback story right now. As you guys know, he's rehabilitating his character as we speak. And, I mean, just think if Mike Zimmer was there still, how much Dre Kirkpatrick, the cornerback that he basically groomed. He had his best years when Mike Zimmer was there. He's a different player now. He's still good, but he's not the same guy. He's not on the up and up like he used to be. Think about Reggie Nelson, that strong safety that used to be out there in Mike Zimmer's defense. I mean, think about all of these different guys. Reggie Nelson got kicked out of Jacksonville. Come on, just think about the mentality that Mike Zimmer tries to bring in. That's his thing. That's working for him. That is basically the underlining narrative for this entire season is the underdog mentality. On to the next one. Teams shut everybody up. That's what Mike Zimmer likes to do, and he does it week in and week out. And Stefon Diggs, he is a perfect reflection of that, and I can say that case closed, definitely pun intended, as of seeing him at the hospital today. Fantastic work, Stefon. I mean, it's unbelievable the work that he has done in just a couple of years based off of the expectations, considering the fact that, remember, he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school, too. I mean, he had offers to everywhere, and his decision, and I respect the hell.
That's right. This is the part of the story I was missing. Yeah, that's right.
I absolutely respect the hell out of this decision. He had offers from all across the globe, all across it, like everywhere. I mean, Alabama. I mean, his brother Trayvon plays at Alabama right now, for reference. Michigan State was one of them. Ohio State was one of them. He had offers from everywhere, but he decided to stay home because he has a couple of brothers. He has a mother that needed his help, and so he wanted to stay in the D.C. area where he's from. And I could not respect that guy more for that decision, and basically to not put himself on national television every single week and use that way to prove his draft status, but instead played a Maryland program that, in my opinion, used Diggs for literally everything. He was the only guy in their offense.
When he was healthy.
When he was healthy. Their quarterback could not throw the ball at all. So he got zero attention out there, and then he basically comes out, he does his thing in training camp, then Mike Zimmer says, you know what, you're doing good, but we're gonna keep you inactive for a while and see how you respond. And as soon as he got his start, he burned one of the league's top corners on his second route of the game. So is Mike Zimmer's coaching working? Do we need to get rid of Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman this offseason if this team implodes? No. They're doing a hell of a job. Look at the evidence. Please, just look at it. Stop being so reactionary all the time. Look at what's going on.
That was pretty fun last year, right? When, the 8-8 and Mike Zimmer, he's got one more year, otherwise I'm gonna be done with him. Same with Rick Spielman. I mean, no. That was a fun time.
Let them
laughing at the internet.
Let them run their program, please. So, from there, let's jump into the Skull Scale segment. So, like I said before, Drew does this every single week, basically what this is. I'll allow you to explain this, actually.
Yeah, so, I mean, I started this back, I think it was the first preseason game, actually. It's pretty simple. On a 1 to 10 scale, it's the optimism towards Minnesota Vikings that I feel. And then what I do is I allow people to tweet to me their own skill scale and why they feel that way. It's basically an optimism meter for the Minnesota Vikings, and obviously right now it's pretty high. As of last week, I had it at 9.5 out of 10. You'll have to tune in tomorrow on VikingsTerritory.com to see what the actual number is. I'll read off some tweets that I've received today about it. Let's see here. My favorite one so far is from Seth Tupal. He always is trying so hard to get in the article, because I feature the best tweets in the article, so right. I think he's like 9 for 10 this year. But he says 10 is the number for the skull scale. Shall I count the ways? And he goes down each number. So 10 wins and counting, 9 points allowed to Atlanta, 8 straight wins, 7 for our swaggy starting QB, 6 home wins, 5 for Teddy cheering Case on the sidelines, 4 winnable games left.
This is really good.
4 winnable games left, 3 Defensive Player of the Year candidates, 2 unbelievable wide receivers, 1 goal, Super Bowl.
Bravo! Unbelievable.
It's a really good tweet, and that's only possible with 280 characters. So shout out to Twitter as well.
Seriously, upon review, is 280 not fantastic if you use it the correct way?
It is.
It's unbelievable. So, we'll kick into the next segment here. I'll give you my skull scale, like Drew said, to get his and the rest of Vikings Twitter's skull scales. You're going to have to check out VikingsTerritory.com in the morning tomorrow. But for me, I've got him at a flat 10 right now. That's how high my optimism is. I have no reason I can't find a reason to dislike this team right now. Again, that's why Drew does this every single week.
Every week, yep.
Every week. So, I think that at this point, through 13 weeks of the season, this is the number 1 team to contend for the Super Bowl. Right now, relative to Week 13. Now, can that change overnight? Yes, it definitely can. We have seen it change over 1 kick before in Vikings. Actually, we've seen it twice. So, you know what?
Yeah.
I'm not saying the Vikings can't blow it. I'm just simply saying right now, hey, find it. Find how they're going to blow it. And let me know if you know how.
Listeners should take Sam Newman's advice. I think he posted an article today on Vikings Territory where he said he's going to be an optimist this year. And you know what? I think we should try to do it, because even if something tragic does happen, it's going to all hit us the same way. We're all going to get hit, by a bus, basically the same way. It's not like we're going to avoid that, right? So might as well jump on right now and start, being optimistic about this and stop thinking about the quote unquote inevitable collapse, because it was funny because one of the responses to the tweet of the shared article was from our buddy Don from Ohio, and he said, wow, now you jinxed it, ... And then Sam responds, yes, Don, my optimism is what will kill the Vikings this season. Absolutely, you are right. So
those guys do a heck of a job going back and forth. Just overall, it's so hard to dislike this team right now. I totally am buying into what Sam said. Join Team Shut Everybody Up. I've been on it for 4 years now, and I am definitely on board with them now. Use that hashtag SEU on the Twitter machine. That's Vikings Nation right now. Shut everybody up, because everyone keeps talking, and the Vikings just keep rolling on to the next one. So, on to the next topic here. Let's do a little story time real quick. I'm going to keep it shorter than last time, since I think last time was like 10 minutes long. That's too much. What story time is going to be, we're going to do this on Wednesdays. I'm just going to share a story that I think is funny or entertaining or motivational or something like that. And, I'm inferring right now that you guys enjoy it when I tell stories. If you don't, definitely let me know, because, again, I don't want to waste anyone's time. So when I was going into 8th grade, I was at Highland Catholic High School, now called Lumen Christi. It's Highland Park area. I had a teacher, and I'm not going to list his name because he knows who he is. He told me that basically I had no shot of getting into Cretin-Derham Hall and that I wasn't going to graduate college. I looked at that, and for what it's worth, this guy is a hell of a teacher. He can really teach you how to write. There's a reason why I learned how to write when I was, younger. But basically, he looked at my personality, which, for what it's worth, I have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. I was diagnosed in 3rd grade. Diagnosed. I think it's a little bit ironic that it's considered disorder, because I consider it like, if you watch Dragon Ball Z when you're younger, it's like going Super Saiyan for me. Because basically I can literally start rattling stuff off, no problem. It's an adrenaline rush thing. So it's like my force. But yet so many people looked at me and were like, you know what? This guy, he doesn't get it. He's not going to college. He might not even finish high school. Who knows? People looked at me and told me basically, you're not doing it right. And I kept saying no. And I think that you guys should listen to that advice, because in my opinion, saying no when people tell you that basically you can't do something, that's the way to go. Because that's only going to boost your confidence. It's only going to boost your momentum. If you don't have haters unless you're good at something. That's how it's always been. I mean, look at Juju Smith-Schuster's Twitter account. It's one of my favorite to look at for haters. I mean, this is one of the most popular guys in the NFL right now. Award-winning smile, fun-loving personality, very cool dude, young, humble, smart, working hard, and yet everyone has something negative to say about him. And again, I'm not dismissing what he did yesterday against the Bengals. That hit was horrific. You can't do that, but let's be real here. You know what was going on. He's backing up his teammate. That's what was going on. I tweeted that yesterday. So,
yep.
I just think it's so funny that when someone says you can't do something, this is what Juju has been doing. And honestly, part of my reasoning here, reason why I tell you this kind of stuff is because people seem to love it when he does it, is when he tells you, what the draft description said of him. Basically not a good route runner. And these are things that I said, for what it's worth. I had him on my initial top 5, I believe, but as I continued to watch film, I looked at him and was like, I don't know about this guy. Had I been able to do a psychological test of him, I firmly believe, that I think I would have came out with a different prediction for him. He's a fantastic player, a fantastic person, and yet he cannot stop getting hate. So keep this in mind moving forward here. When someone tells you you can't be a writer, you can't be an athlete, you can't do whatever it is that you are trying to do, really want to do, are passionate about, look him in the eye and just say, well, thanks for evaluating my performance. I don't care, because there's nothing that nobody can say anything to I don't care. That's it. That's
the ultimate comeback.
That's the ultimate comeback. That's case closed, pun intended. So on to the next segment here. Let's finish up here with some Twitter questions before we do that extended sign out. Why don't you start off here with that first Twitter question for me? As I said before, we're only picking 3 Twitter questions per show right now. Right. If your question does not get answered and you want to try re-entering that into my mailbag, I'm going to do that on Thursdays moving forward. Use the hashtag VT mailbag so I can group them all together. It just makes my life a lot easier if you do that. Or you can send me an email at reidellr4@gmail.com. But we're going to pick the best ones here, and we're going to talk about it on the show on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday basis. So first question.
Yeah. First question here. It's kind of relates almost back to our school skill discussion of how confident we are in this team. But from Jay Alvarez at Darth Boeing. Is it too early for me to book a trip for the Vikings or for the second round playoff game at US Bank Stadium? I don't want to jinx it. It would be a long way for me. I'm from the hurricane hit Caribbean. So what should we suggest?
We're extending all the way to the Caribbean right now. I love it.
Of course we are. We're an international show.
Before I answer this question, can I just say that St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands is one of my absolute favorite places in the world. St. Thomas, St. John. I used to go there with my mom every single year when I was like 8 to 12 years old. Absolute one of my favorite places in the world. So highly respect that, and thanks for being a Vikings fan. Is it too early? No, not for your situation. I mean, you live far away. You got to get, you want to get your plane ticket cheap. This team is rolling right now. There's no reason right now, there's no reason to suggest they won't make it to the second round because they're probably going to have that bye. I mean, dude, if you've got the money, put it down because if they don't make it, they're going to give you your money back. That's how it works. So if the Vikings are already selling postseason tickets, definitely get after that. I mean, it looks like they're going to get a first-round bye right now. I would do that.
Well, and even if they don't get the first-round bye, at this point, it's like insanely small chance they don't have a home playoff game.
Right.
So, I mean, they have to win one game, or the Packers and the Lions will have to lose one game for the Vikings to not have the home playoff game, and I like their chances a ton at home. So, yeah, I'd go ahead and make your plans right now, because that should be a fun weekend. That second week of the playoffs it should be a good one.
It's a great way to save money. Just book early, start believing. Look at the evidence. I bought Bengals tickets 6 weeks ago because I like to be a fan once per year. And I was kind of expecting that it was going to be Teddy Bridgewater's first home start. That was why I bought the tickets initially. But my process there, it wasn't wrong. I expected this team to be good when we play the Bengals next week at home at US Bank, and I wanted to go party with the boys out there because I think that's I got to do that once per year. I never want to forget what being a fan is like.
Yeah, of course.
So get your tickets early. Why not? I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You're not going to lose any money. They're going to give you your money back. So yeah, buy your tickets. Who cares? Next question.
I'm going to combine two of them here. They're very similar to what they're asking. So, Don from Ohio, can you see the Vikings defense raised to another level by the playoffs? And in parentheses, he adds, create more turnovers and score points defensively. And then from Mr. Amazing at @IKeepIt_SoReal. So real. Do you believe this defense can carry a team to the Super Bowl like the Ravens did with Dilfer? So how do you feel about those two things? Because it's basically asking, can this defense get up to another level? Right, yeah.
So I'm going to answer that one first because I think that's the easier of these two questions here. I don't mean to be rude to your question. I appreciate all questions, but I think this is probably the easier one for me personally to answer. Yes, I think so. I think that's a great comp. I think people have been using that comp as soon as Case Keenum started playing well. Just because the Baltimore Ravens defense in 2000 was one of the absolute best defenses of all time. We all know that. And Trent Dilfer is obviously not one of the better quarterbacks of all time. So it's an easy comparison in my mind. So yeah, I see it. I mean, why can't they? I have no reason to tell you that they can't right now. So at this point in the season, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this defense is playing lights out. Case Keenum is playing a lot better than Trent Dilfer ever could. I mean, yeah, why not?
That's the point I was going to make is that, and our friend Mr. Amazing, he actually adds that in the tweet and says, I know this offense is a borderline top 5 right now, but I mean the point is the Vikings are very much a contender, I think, even with without a big name quarterback in there, which is part of the reason why we don't the Vikings aren't getting that national recognition. Is there's no Drew Brees, there's no Tom Brady, Ben Roethlisberger, one of those big names at playing quarterback. It's Case Keenum, undrafted guy, relatively boring in comparison to the rest of these guys. Last question. It's also from Don from Ohio, just because I really wanted.
Wait, we didn't get that. We didn't get that last one out of the way from Don though, real quick. The one.
Oh well, okay. Do you see the Vikings defense creating more turnovers, score more points?
Yes, I do, because generally speaking, when defenses play well, that's when turnovers happen. Keep that one simple, right? I mean, when defenses are playing, when they're in the right spot, when they're anticipating. Basically, they're anticipating routes, something we saw Mackenzie Alexander do very well last week. Xavier Rhodes has been doing it very well. Trey Waynes has shown great ball skills, despite what a lot of people said about him coming out of Michigan State. I mean, Harrison Smith, I know he didn't have a pick all of last year. He should have had one in that Tennessee game last year, but Everson Griffin got it called back on a penalty. But, I mean, he's a ball hawk. He's a stud. He's in the top, 10 right now in interceptions. I believe he has 3 on the year. So, yeah, I absolutely can see more turnovers. Fumbles are generally a product of, nervousy or, happy feet or, being hit when you're, in a poor position with your body. Putting your helmet on the football is generally speaking what coaches are going to teach to force fumbles, which is something that Mike Zimmer teaches. I've seen Jerry Gray talk about this too as well with cornerbacks. I mean, putting your helmet on the football is something they teach with Minnesota, and basically hitting their hands with your helmet. Think about when if you slam your finger in a car door, think about that's kind of what it's like here. When you basically, if you're holding the football and you've got it tight in your shoulder here, and someone comes in and hits you with his helmet and basically slams your hand against your body in between another helmet or whatever, it's like slamming your hand in a car door, because these are supreme athletes. So that's something that it sounds dirty when you spell it out, but that's football. I mean, this is a gladiator sport, folks. I mean, to some degree, that's what's going to happen. That's put your hat on the football. That's what they teach. That's where fumbles happen. The Vikings do that. So, yes, Don, I absolutely see more turnovers coming.
For what it's worth, I don't think it's absolutely necessary, because
right.
the Vikings defense has still been elite without those turnovers and those defensive touchdowns, which I think suggests a much, a higher step that they've taken already from last year. And I don't think that, I think what Mike Zimmer does is his method, his emphasis is to not allow first downs.
Right.
So if it's 3rd and 8, he's not gonna, his guys aren't gambling, right? His guys aren't going to gamble. They're going to allow the underneath stuff, give them 5 yards, and take the punt instead of going after the turnover, going after the fumble, whatever it is. And I think that's going to stay the same as long as it works.
Absolutely.
The final question here, and I really wanted to answer this one, so we're going to give this one a chance here. Do you agree with this statement that the Vikings are surrounded by all grade B to B plus players, and come playoffs can beat teams with some A players on them? And he alludes to Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Cam Newton. So I think, I don't know if he's referring to just quarterback position, but because
no, he's probably talking about blue chip players across the board because
right. But
you think about Seattle, New Orleans, Philadelphia, they all have a lot of blue chip players. The Vikings, like we said, they do. But
is there really that big of a difference between how many blue chip players the Saints, the Panthers, the Seahawks have?
They're just first round picks.
The Patriots, right? But I'm saying, because if you look at the Vikings, Everson Griffin is, Anthony Barr is, Linval Joseph is,
Xavier Rhodes,
Harrison Smith is, Xavier Rhodes is,
Danielle Hunter could be. You
look at,
you could argue Stefon Diggs, and Adam Thielen.
Yeah, for sure, 5 of them on defense.
Yep.
And then on offense, Adam Thielen probably is at this point. Stefon Diggs could be at this point. It's not like the Vikings don't have these quote unquote A players. It's just that they're not as pronounced or as celebrated in the media as these quarterbacks on other teams, and then the receivers that they throw to, with Brady and Gronk in New England, for example, or Russell Wilson, Doug Baldwin even. It's just that these guys get way more attention. This Vikings defense, it's such a team atmosphere, the team, the way they play, the team method of playing, that they don't get the recognition as individual stars. So I think that, so my answer to this question is that I don't really agree with it, because I think the Vikings have the A players that he's he's referencing here.
And honestly, he's referencing a bunch of players: Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Doug Baldwin, who, by the way, those guys didn't come out as blue chip players. Russell Wilson's a mid-round pick. Doug Baldwin, undrafted. Drew Brees coming out of Purdue. He was late first-round pick that was seen as an undersized quarterback. Think about when he went to the Saints originally. Started with his career with San Diego, got hurt. Then he had an interview with Miami. Miami let him walk, and he went to New Orleans, met up with Sean Payton, and became this blue-chip quality player that you're speaking of. So, in my opinion, the Vikings have all of the same thing as a lot of these good teams. John Schneider in Seattle does a fantastic job getting guys in the late rounds. Richard Sherman, Cam Chancellor, just to name you a couple right off the top of my head. This is what good general managers do. They turn players that had a 2.0 GPA expected and turn that into a 4.0 with good coaching. That's what Mike Zimmer has done. That's what Pete Carroll has done. That's what Sean Payton has done. That's what Doug Peterson has done. That's what good coaches do, folks, is they take, quote, bad players and they turn them into great players. And this, for what it's worth, is probably the greatest argument right here for Mike Zimmer as Coach of the Year.
Yeah, exactly. I completely agree with that. Would he be your favorite at this point, Coach of the Year? This is kind of off topic here.
It's either
really
him. It's him or Doug Peterson right now. Both guys were basically expected to have solid teams, but not great teams. If you look at my record predictions, I think I had the Vikes at 10-6 and Philadelphia at 6-10. So these are two teams that, from someone who does do his homework, I thought they were going to be a lot different than they are, and yet we're looking at two teams that could potentially be 13-3. So those are the two definitive candidates right now.
Right. Oh yeah, I agree. But I would add that, I wonder if it's possible, so if Mike Zimmer gets Coach of the Year, I wonder if it can also be a reflection on the offensive coordinator, because
yes, absolutely.
Because
he hired him.
The Vikings have, or I should say, the Vikings are without their top quarterback, top running back, and this offense is still this good. But realistically, Mike Zimmer isn't getting, doesn't deserve all the credit for that. Obviously, if you have Pat Shurmur making it, so I feel like.
But he hired him. He did hire him.
That's true. That's true. So if there's a coaching staff of the year, I think the Vikings are for sure.
Yes, good call.
Between Zimmer, Shermer, Sperano at offensive line. I mean, George Edwards, Andre Patterson. I think that's definitively the answer here. But that's all we have for Twitter. So
absolutely. Well, great. Thank you once again, folks, for your questions. Again, if we didn't get to your question, please keep sending them in. It's a volume thing. We're trying to keep this show around 45 to 60 minutes. We'd love. I think I could sit here all day and answer questions. To be real with you, I just. For the purpose of the fact that some people like to listen to radio for 1 hour as they're driving to work or whatever it is, that's generally when we get the most of our downloads, is when you guys are driving to work. We like to keep this a relatively short show from a podcast perspective, I suppose. So thank you for your questions. Send them into the VT mailbag, hashtag VT mailbag if we missed them, and I'll try to get to those on Thursday. So thanks once again, folks. On to the sign out now. So obviously the beer pong tournament is coming up later on this week, right, on December 9th, Saturday at Black Stack Brewing once again. Here's the deal for that, is on top of that promotion right there, on top of being able to play beer pong, I'm going to be there on Saturday. So if any of you guys, I don't care who you are, does not matter. First one that comes up to me and says, "What's up? How are you doing?" to me, those words, "What's up? How are you doing?" 5 words. First one to do it gets a free t-shirt on me. If you show up to Black Stack and say those 5 words to me, first one to do it, I'll plan on being there.
Reference the podcast. Reference the podcast.
You could also reference the podcast if you like. Yeah.
I guess it wouldn't hurt. Yeah.
It wouldn't hurt. You do not need to give an iTunes review. If you want to, I highly suggest it, because I'm going to do a coverage book of all the coverage charts at the end of the year here. And if you have done a review by the end of the beer pong tournament on Saturday, I'll sell it for $1 to you. Otherwise, it's going to cost you $5. So basically what I'm trying to do here is reward the people that have been following my work, Drew's work, Viking Territory for a while. That's the goal here. So if you go on and do a review before the end of Saturday's beer pong tournament, right around 4 p.m., you will have the opportunity to get my coverage book for $1 if you want it at the end of the year. Otherwise, it's going to be $5, period. Once again, if you come up and say, "What's up? How are you doing?" and mention the About the Labor podcast to me on Saturday at Black Stack Brewing, you will have the opportunity to win a free t-shirt on me. You can pick your t-shirt. I mean, I obviously would prefer if it's an About the Labor t-shirt, but any of Brett Anderson's designs on the Amazon page are available. Make sure to check those out in advance if you think that that's something you'd want. Generally speaking, those are going to cost about $20. So this is if you like About the Labor, if you like Vikings Territory, this is an opportunity to get some free gear from us. So come say, "What's up? How are you doing?" Mention the About the Labor podcast Saturday at Black Stack Brewing. That's on North Pryor Avenue off of University, by the way. So once again here, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, iHeartRadio, VikingsTerritory.com, of course, Podbean. Check us out on Twitter at VikingsATLPod, on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you haven't already, hit that upvote. Again, I don't know why this matters, but people, we get more views if you upvote the page. So please hit that upvote button. Again, I don't really care, but it'd be nice if we could get some more views, we could get some more gear and that kind of stuff. So do that for me and hit that subscribe button on the Vikings Territory page. We are on Facebook, by the way. If we get to 100 Facebook likes on the About the Labor page by the end of the week, I'll start putting content on that page as well. How about that? That's the deal.
Start put content on the page. It's probably something you should do.
Right now
we should do that as a team.
Right now I just put the actual podcast every single time it's posts, and I'm saying I'll do more content for the page if I know that people are actually watching it. So like that Facebook page if you have not already.
Good to know. I didn't really know that was actually a thing still. Facebook page, but hey,
we never use it. So those are all the places that you can find us. Myself, Robert Reidell on Twitter, Reidell. But please call me BJ, because that's my name now. And Drew Mahowald on Twitter, Mahowald. Make sure to follow both of us, and we'll get you some extra Vikings content every week, giveaways, sponsor stuff, fun advertising. I really take pride in trying to get advertising products that I think that you guys could actually bear to listen to. I'm a huge fan of Bill Burr, the stand-up comedian, and I think he does a fantastic job picking out products that are actually applicable to people listening to his podcast. So I'm trying to take away from stuff that he does, fun reads of the scripts, fun products that are cool to do. And, we're starting to get some interesting offers and stuff, so it seems like we might be able to take our pick pretty soon here. So Yeah, if you want to advertise us, you know my email address, ReidellR4@gmail.com. I do not discriminate, folks. And once again, that's iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, VikingsTerritory.com for sure, Podbean, Vikings ATL Pod on Twitter machine.
This has been a very concise wrap-up.
I'm trying to go a little bit faster here for the people that say that I talk too much. So thank you so much for being here once again. Thank you for the influx of listeners and stuff like that. It's been a whirlwind over the last couple of days, and it's been a lot of fun here. And we're excited to come up with some more premium content for you on your Minnesota Vikings. Your 10-2 number 1 seed Minnesota Vikings through 13 weeks of play. We'll be back later on this week here talking about the Carolina Panthers matchup. We'll be looking at guys like Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, Luke Kuechly, those guys, stuff like that. James Bradbury and their secondary guy that I think the Vikings can expose, all that kind of stuff. So make sure to be here for the pregame primer later on this week. Get your About the Labor breakdown, your fix in for the week. So thanks again for listening, folks, and Drew and I will catch you later on this week.